Robyn, you are such an incredible lady with such a wealth of experience. Can you share with us some of your background and some of the things that you've done?
Certainly. I started off being a nurse, and then I became a psychiatric nurse and a naturopath and a psychologist, and then a PhD, and then a marriage celebrant. So I've had a lot of different changes in my life.
Yeah, and a singer right here as well.
Yes, and now I'm a singer.
And you have such an amazing voice.
Oh, thank you.
Robyn, can you tell me a little bit about how your experience, how you've been able to use some of your experience with natural disasters and trauma in your life?
Certainly, it started for me where I experienced trauma as a child, so I experienced it in a personal way that helped me understand people throughout my life. And then I worked with people in the emergency department of a major public hospital, and I was a debriefer for people after a critical incident. And in that debriefing I got to debrief staff, but I also got to understand the individuals, because if there was someone in crisis, I'd be called to that crisis. So if someone was lying on a railway line, or if I had someone about to jump off a bridge and someone else about to throw themselves under a train, and I would talk to those people on the phone and get them the help and help that crisis resolve itself. So then I got to have that experience with the individual. Then when I became a psychologist and worked in private practice, one of my specialties was homicide. So then I got to see what happened to families. So when you have a homicide, it doesn't happen to one person, It happens to a whole family and friends. So I got to see how that affects those people. And then I became involved in more global or larger crises when I worked with the Red Cross as a support worker. So I got to see then how communities and how communities react. So I guess I've been lucky enough to see the personal, then individual, and then family, and then communities. So, you know, I've been able to have a more round understanding
and
of what happens to people in a crisis.
How does it affect the families and the people around them?
I know that I had someone after a homicide say to me, it's like that when the homicide happened, it's like they blew a hole in my heart and it'll never ever be the same again. And she said that how she felt that I helped her was that she imagined that my hands were around her heart and that I was holding her in that space until that time that she could find some inner strength and some resilience to move on in a different way. And when your heart's blown apart like that, there's no getting away from the fact that you will never ever be the same again. You can't live through a crisis and expect that one day you'll wake up and you'll be the same as you used to be. You'll be different. You'll be different in new ways, in ways that you don't even know yet. And so it's the job of the person that's the helper to hold you in the space until you can find out who that new person is that you're going to be.
Okay, great. And do you have any practical advice on somebody that perhaps hasn't ever worked in this field, that may be able to support their families and support their friends and just support the people around them in their community on how to pull through on this?
I think that there's lots of things I'd like to say, but one of the first things is when you go into a place where people are in crisis, what's happened to those people is that they've used the strength that they've always used in crisis. So if it's someone who's put a wall up, and so maybe every time they had a crisis in their life, they put up this huge brick wall and they hid behind that brick wall, and that's how they got through their crisis. So they have this huge crisis happen to them, that wall's going up. Now, as a helper, a friend or a worker, you don't want to be going in there trying to bring that wall down. Trying to go, now tell me how you're feeling. No, tell me what's really happening. If you go in and you do those sorts of things, you'll break down the body's natural way of protecting itself. What's amazing about the human spirit is that it wants to survive. So the survivor has used their own resources to survive, and it's really important that we don't go in with a set of this is what you should do and this is what you should say, but you see every person as an individual and you hold them in this beautiful love space. Because when you take all the terminology and all the education away from it, it's about love. It's about being able to love those people until they're able to move on. Not that you ever stop loving them, but in that moment you love them.
Yeah, great, thank you. Also, for those that have been out there and giving so much for a long period of time and are still out there trying to give, and perhaps they've forgotten to top up to top back up on their own energy, what advice would you have for those people?
Well, look, I think I can talk to that really personally to me, because I worked for 37 years in the helping profession, and I thought that the only way I could help people was to be there 100% for them. So if they rang me at 9 o'clock at night crying or 7 o'clock in the morning, I'd step up to the plate and I'd be there and I'd be helping them. And then one day it was like a curtain came down, and I realised that what I was doing had finished, and that if I didn't put my energy into my own dream and my own passion, which is singing, that I would die with a broken heart. And I had this argument with myself, but here you are, you're meant to be helping people. How can you walk away and not do that anymore? And what I realised was, in this first 37 years, this is how I was meant to help people. But now I can help people on a global level with the singing and the music, and I've been writing beautiful mantras and playing the flute, and now I'm writing a song of world peace that I hope will become a world anthem that will be the heartbeat of humanity. So now I get to help larger groups of people, but at the same time I get to live my passion.
That's fantastic.
When you're living your passion, your heart's open, you're full of love, and then you can spread that love to larger and bigger groups of people.
Yeah.
So I want to say to people, do it your way. Make sure you stand in your own heart, you stand in your own strengths, and you do it your way while being absolutely respectful of whoever it is you're helping.
Great.
Don't try to put your opinions or your beliefs, but totally stand in the space of holding them in their place.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Robyn. Also, just one last thing. Do you have any stories of any, like somebody perhaps that you've watched go through a trauma and a crisis that has actually gone through right back to the other end and are in an even stronger place than before when they started? Sorry, I stammered that one.
That's okay, because what came to mind was, last week I interviewed a young boy, well, young, 30, and he had a car accident and he became a quadriplegic. And for 6 years he was in a wheelchair, unable to, when the accident happened, he was unable to brush his teeth, comb his hair, wash his face. He couldn't move anything from his neck down. 6 years later, I want to tell you what he told me in the interview. I said to him, when you were first told that, what did you think when you were told you'd never walk again? And he asked the nurse, and she said to him, I'm really sorry, but you'll never walk again. And when the nurse left the room, his mother said, you will walk again, do not believe that girl. What she told you was not true. And 6 years later, he's walking. And now he's written a book called Nothing to Fear But Fear Itself. And now he released it last week, and now he's trying to inspire anyone who's had a crisis and been told nothing's possible, that everything is possible.
That's great. What's his name, Robyn?
His name's Sam Riggio, and he's a young man from Sunbury.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Robyn, thank you so much for your inspiration and your amazing stories and your wealth of knowledge. I'm sure that we all got something out of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck, everybody.